Welcome, everybody, and thanks for coming. Hopefully, we'll have more than just 6 things to talk about with Gen AI. Have you heard more than 6 already? And this particular session, we're going to talk about generational AI, Gen AI in telecommunications. So I'm Kracik. I'm head of product marketing for Google Distributed Cloud, Networking, and Telecommunications. We'll have a great session for you today. And we'll start by introducing our panelists. We'll talk about the progress of AI, and then we'll move into some very specific case study conversations and have some open Q&A. So there will be mics floating around towards the end of the presentation. And think of those questions. Take advantage of the esteemed panel we have here today. And with that, I'd like to welcome up our panel. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Brian.
Hey. Brian,
Kamran.
how's it going?
Thank you. All right, so if we could, guys, let's just start with a brief introduction. Give the folks an idea of what your responsibilities are, who you're with, and what's happening.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. I am at Verizon. I have basically 3 domains that I'm responsible for. All the architecture innovation is in one area. Our global infrastructure, which is our data centers, our network. It's a local US company from a consumer perspective, but Verizon is a global B2B company. So we have about 3,000 buildings and sites across the world in every continent, except for Antarctica. Not that one yet. That one
it seems like a bad business model.
It probably wouldn't be very good.
Steve. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, and the third one is all the business operations within technology, which I'm responsible for.
Excellent. Thank you, Kamran. Steve?
So I run data and AI for Orange Group. We're spread across 26 countries, nearly 300 million subscribers, and my team covers the range from data infrastructure and data engineering and data science to AI engineering, and I have all of the research resources as well. And all of the operating companies, they're my customer.
And I'm Ankur, Jain. I'm a longtime Googler, now been at Google for about 19 years. I have 2 different roles. I lead engineering for Google Distributed Cloud, but I'm also, as relevant to this particular panel, I lead Google Cloud's telecom industry, which includes our partnerships, solutions, and products for the telecom vertical.
Well, thank you so much. And I think the first question I have, in telecom, we've traditionally been a little bit slower to adopt. And we're now into this AI, Gen AI cycle. Is it hype or is it real? Is it starting to happen?
I think it's definitely real. We are making really big bets at Verizon on AI, Gen AI, and we already see some of the fruits that we've been planting. So it's pretty, I think it's very real.
Steve, what are you thinking?
I agree. Internally, we have a secure version of a product that allows anybody in the company to interact with Gen AI, and it's being used really actively for document summarization, translation, code commenting, and over 25,000 of our employees are using it, and we're adding 1,000 a week, and we're really not promoting the product very much, so clearly there's demand, and the value is really significant, just for those day-to-day practices, so independently of the business.
Not promoting the product, but still getting 1,000.
The word of mouth is incredible.
I wish I had a product like that. That would be awesome. It's my dream. Ankur, are we moving too fast?
I think I would say 2 things over here, right? One, when it comes to Gen AI itself, I do think that while last year was an year when I was speaking to partners and customers such as Verizon and Orange and others, people were running experiments last year. This is definitely the year where we are seeing people take those and beginning to figure out how to translate that into production and get that into production and at scale. But that's part one. I would mention you were saying AI and Gen AI. When it comes to use of AI for networks, I feel that's been going on for a while now, right? As in, it's been going on for years, I would say, and this is for all kinds of use cases, whether it's on the customer experience side or on network operations, anomaly detections, predictions, stuff like that. I think that's already been happening for a while. So I just wanted to maybe just say that and also solicit feedback from
Absolutely.
folks. Yeah.
We've been using AI for root cause analysis. We've been using it to have models to understand which cell sites are more profitable than others to influence our CapEx deployments. We use it for anomaly detection in our data pipelines. We use it for predicting what kinds of offers to give to customers. Those are all simple solutions. And I think being really responsible about using the right tool for the right problem is really important, because at Orange we care both about obviously the economics of our business, but also the environmental impact. So having this wealth of solutions from Google all within one environment inside of Vertex is incredibly powerful, because then we have one tool chain, it's unified, it's been it's really simplified what before was incredibly complicated.
Well, consistency can create speed, and I think that's one thing that all of us are trying to move faster and faster. We see the business moving faster. So Ankur touched on POCs, and at Verizon, Kamran, can you elaborate a little bit? I know we've run a lot of POCs. What's your model look like as we get this tsunami of AI and Gen AI?
Yeah. As Gen AI is concerned, let's talk about that one, because AI, as Steve also said, it's been around for a long time. It's not something new. Gen AI is relatively new. So last year for us was a lot of experimentation. So I think in the 5 years that I've been in Verizon, we hadn't run as many POCs as we did last year. Not just to understand the technology and also what our partners can do, but also how can we absorb it. And things like, of course, Verizon is hypersensitive to data privacy, data security, that type of stuff. So, when you think about doing POCs, one of the key things you want to make sure is, yes, of course, does it address the use cases that we are looking for, or does it address the business needs? But also, can we keep the customer data safe? That's very important to us. So last year, we did quite a bit of that. But towards the end of last year, we started adopting some of the newer technologies. And it's a very rigorous process. I mean, we always say our partners have to be really, really patient with us, because we really put the systems through its process.
So when you say rigorous process, what gives it the rigor? Are you testing your own processes? Are you testing the products? How are you digging into
all the above, all the above. And there is multiple organizations involved. We have cybersecurity involved, we have architecture involved, we have our AI and data organization involved. There's a lot of involved engineers, and we really know our use cases pretty well, so we put the system through its paces. And it takes time. And 9 out of 10, it doesn't pan out. It hasn't panned out last year. So we've been very selective about which technologies we adopt.
So what is that selection criteria? 9 out of 10, it seems like a bad portfolio model. Is it the right one for you?
Not necessarily. It's not always a goodbye. It's maybe see you later. You're not there yet for us. You got to realize Verizon, the scale of Verizon is so large that if something is very, very good, it may not be as good when we scale it.
Yes.
So that's one of the criteria. Of course, speed and, does it fit our architecture? We have a model, a North Star architecture. So if it completely derails that, it causes a lot of problems in terms of, upkeep and, also our own knowledge of the platforms and stuff like. So it's got to fit pretty well within our organization before we adopt the solution.
It makes a lot of sense. And are you running the same model across your different business units? Is it unified in that fashion?
It is.
It can be pretty tough.
We have a governance in technology that we follow, yeah. But there is flexibility in there, because the needs of the business, Verizon is, again, very large. We have Verizon Business, Verizon Consumer. Within Consumer, you have value segment. All of these have very, very different needs. So we want to make sure that we are actually taking into consideration those specific needs, but we want to build once and use many. We don't want to build microsystems for every single thing. So that's one of the criteria.
Just out of curiosity, though, did you have, let's say, you have 100, 200 use cases that you might have identified across the company? Did you go and at the top level then identify hey, these are the 10 use cases we're going to go first after, or did you just let each part of your organization go and go well with those 200 use cases and then only later on do the sorting out?
As you can imagine, when Gen AI came up, and we have a pretty intelligent workforce, so everybody's thinking about, okay, can I apply it to this business problem? Mm-hmm. I can apply it to this business problem. And of course, we have a limited budget. We have limited resources. So we prioritize. We have probably hundreds of use cases that are on the table. But one thing I want to actually talk about, and one of the things that's very close to what our strategy is a little bit different. We used to look at just use cases, but we're pivoting away from a use case specific solution to more of a, okay, how do we do a use case agnostic platform? Because again, scale is, you can't tackle every single use case in its own silo. It won't work.
So the focus is to move business faster then.
Exactly.
Give me the platform, let me adjust.
Exactly.
How is the team adapting to that?
Pretty well. We launched our own platform late last year. Coincidentally, it's called Vegas, Verizon Enterprise. Exactly, Verizon Enterprise Gen AI Services. That was launched. It was completely independent about this event. We didn't know this event was going to take place when we named it.
I'm glad we were not doing this in Cincinnati or something.
I wouldn't remember the acronyms then. It would be impossible. So Vegas, we launched Vegas, and it
runs all the time. It's 24/7.
It's a platform that is agnostic to use cases, but it can be used across multiple use cases across different domains. So that's our strategy, to really democratize that in a way that we can put the platform in place, and then, of course, technology is very involved, but then, different domains can take advantage.
Well, and you just mentioned a term, so democratization. And Steve, what are you doing at Orange to kind of move your organization so it can handle this?
Yeah, in fact, we started a major program called Data Democracy, because what we had was inside of each of these 26 operating companies, we had our data that was siloed, that mapped to the organizational silos. And so our vision is to break down those silos by having the data much more widely available and accessible through a marketplace. And we love all of the functionality relating to natural language interaction and discovery of the data that we saw yesterday. Organizationally, we also, tsunami is the right word. So they created my position. I peer to the CIO and the network CTO, because the CEOs of our businesses are really struggling with understanding how not only does their business need to adapt, but how does the culture need to adapt. So one of the things we did, we created a uniform way to measure value of the use cases, and then we publicly publish that with KPIs that each CEO reports quarterly, and so it creates this really nice competitive tension between the CEOs, but it also makes this tool so that anybody in the company can really easily discover which use cases are growing and for what reason, to learn more. And the next step is to then make the models and the tooling also equally available in a way that's a lot more democratic than we've had in the past.
That's pretty fabulous. And Ankur, when you look at it from a product perspective, how do you view what's happening in this space?
Yeah, look, I think both what Kamran and Steve, you folks talked about, I think it is important that we really build the foundation right now for going after all these use cases and enabling all the teams to go after whatever is the business problem that they want to solve. And in that case, whether it is, it's just things like setting up, making it easy for developers to focus on the business problem rather than setting up the underlying data governance and IAM and setting up the projects and so on and so forth, making it using platforms. What we are seeing a lot of other customers also do is what you are saying, which is build out the foundation layer, whether it's on the data side, or it is on the AI and machine learning lifecycle management part. Pick up the platform that makes most sense for you. Of course, you love for it to be Google Cloud, and then use common data governance, use common data provenance techniques, and so on. So, I think that's really the next best step, if I may, that should be taken from a organizational perspective, a technical and organizational perspective.
And we had a really complex situation because in each of the 26 countries, we have varying regulatory requirements. Mm-hmm. And so some of those requirements require us to have certain data on premise. So we needed to have a really elegant hybrid architecture between on-prem and public cloud for regulatory reasons, mm-hmm. but also for commercial reasons. So just the network telemetry data, so that the data we use to operate the network, that's over a petabyte a day. And there's no way we're sending all of that data to BigQuery. So having something that we could deploy in each country in our own data centers to manage that dynamically, as well as to have AI functionality running there, was really transformative for the business and massively simplified the skills necessary for those teams to learn. And like you were saying, it sort of let the data engineering teams focus on adding value, not just managing incredibly complex infrastructure, which was totally heterogeneous from country to country. And just like we had the data silos, we had infrastructure silos that had built up over many, many years.
And when you look at that, kind of the modernization of infrastructure seems like it's a big focus for you. Kamran, is that part of the platform focus?
Yeah, absolutely. We are experimenting. We're actually beyond experimentation. We've deployed in some areas in our infrastructure the AI ops models. How do we self-heal? How do we move into more predictive versus reactive, dealing with outages and so forth. And I think that's been very, very good. We barely have an internal network. An external network is a little different.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that as well. But internal network, that has paid us a lot, paid good dividends, because we don't have really much P1 outages internally. We keep it pretty well. On the external, of course, is a little different. With quality of service, we have actually, through digital twin of our network, we are looking at, okay, where are some of the potential areas that could cause problems, and we can be proactive. I think you talked about capital investments. We use that as well in AI, making sure that we prioritize which areas we need to invest in. That's been very, very productive for us. And of course, when you talk about 100 million or so subscribers, 100 million plus devices, making sure that we monitor that very, very well in terms of what the quality of experience is for the customer.
Yeah, I think that becomes pretty key. I mean, when we were doing wireless and switches, and the first thing my NOC guys would do is turn off all those alerts. They were quite annoying to them. So having a tool and having some tools that can look across that and really elevate the items that you need to have is really critical.
The goal is to really get to the point that those red lights don't show up.
Yes.
So we can be in a preventive mode.
Love it, love it. We talked about kind of the volume of POCs. Are there anything special you're doing? Ankur, I know we're doing hackathons in a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think, by the way, interestingly, we sort of started off even within our own team doing something similar, where not everyone, at least my engineering team, there are a lot of people who come from a infrastructure background, and so how do you get that kind of a team trained in thinking about the capabilities? And so yeah, for sure, we started off doing internal hackathons, but then of course, Google Cloud as a whole, when we are working with communication service providers, that's something we are doing with many CSPs around the world, which is we help conduct hackathons in those companies just for them, for the employees of CSPs to get more comfortable with the tooling that is out there. We're of course working with many of our SI partners globally, and I think there were some stats shared yesterday at the keynote, but we're training a lot of our partners with both the underlying technologies as well as Google Cloud's tools, so that they can provide their training as well as work on these projects for in customers and our partners.
And I think the other piece is we're going to have a hackathon at Digital Transformation World come out here in June. So it's doing that in an open forum, in an open environment. Steve, what are some of the kind of ways that you're trying to promote and get these tools into the hands of non-technical people?
Sure. So I mentioned having this tool available widely across the company, and we're just continually surprised at how people find new ways to use generative AI tooling. I think for me, though, the next level is the idea that we can use natural language to interact with computers. The idea of unleashing the power of our own data and our own infrastructure to employees who aren't programmers is going to be transformative for the business. And The second challenge for us is that we have operations across many Western African countries where a lot of the regional variants of French and Arabic, but also local languages, are not well understood. And so for us, in terms of the next step, we're really excited about the ability to use generative AI at scale to recognize all of these languages, not just for our internal purposes, but also just to empower all of these people and to make sure that they're not left behind with the AI revolution and the opportunities it's going to bring.
I could imagine that this could even be helpful for your own internal teams or field operations teams, or like whatever, like operations teams in some of the countries where your internal documentation may mostly exist in English, let's say.
That's right.
But the employees themselves are more conversant with
their native language.
With native language.
It's so true. We have a number of challenges there, right? The environments at the cell sites and at the fiber sites is extremely complex. Mm-hmm. So enabling a field service technician to have a natural language interaction with all of that information is very, very useful. Mm-hmm. The idea that they can remotely request help from people is extremely useful. And also those people are, they're hard to train. And so the idea that at the beginning of the training cycle, they can be interacting with an AI to learn, as opposed to having to be manually trained in an apprenticeship situation. So we think we can get the people to come up to speed much faster. And that would then, we also think, gives them a lot more autonomy. Yeah. So in a lot of our deployments today, you go to the cell site, and there's this very, very rigid set of steps that you're taking, and maybe that's not the right procedure. And so if we have this much more dynamic way of supporting the field service agent, that's very interesting. And then lastly, the summarization of all of that work, mm-hmm. as opposed to having the technician having to be filling out forms, using AI to just summarize all of the work that was done at the site and then having that filled. That also dramatically improves our root cause analysis and the other systems that are running at the NOC that rely on that information. So we just think that's going to transform the business, both in terms of cost, but also our truck rolls are the majority of our remaining CO2 budget that we don't really know how to manage well. So we see huge opportunities there too.
That's excellent. And I think what I want to do now is let's kind of move into some of the specifics. Yeah, so you're leveraging AI, and we talked about that, especially in the CX space. Could you give us a little bit of an idea about what you're doing and how you're implementing that? Give us the size and scope of the problem you're trying to solve and how you're solving it.
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, we are moving away from this artisanal kind of analytics into more industrial AI. We talk about industrial AI quite a bit, which means really solving problems using AI at scale. So that's the approach that we have in terms of how do we do this. And of course, in every domain, it has a relevance. We are, as you know, like use cases you ask for specifics. CCAI, which is a Google product. We were, I think, the first adopter of it worldwide some years ago, and it's kind of grown with us quite a bit. This year, we're pivoting towards Infobot, which is the next generation of it with Gen AI backend platform. We're in the process of deploying that for our call centers, again, at a large scale, and also at, with field technicians using the same thing.
That's on the consumer side, and then you're also doing...
and the network side as well with the field engineers.
How do we know if we're successful?
We have actually pretty rigorous KPIs that keep track. And it's not measured from a technology perspective. Our Verizon Consumer Group measures those things very, very closely. And we do actually see how it impacts our customers and our customer satisfaction. And we're moving away from NPS because NPS is not really a true indication of CSAT. Yeah. So we're using AI in that area to get a better feel for what our customer experience is like. So that's just one use case. In a network side, I mentioned about the capital allocation. With the devices that we monitor, the network itself, quality of service of the network is a very big thing. And as Steve also talked about, we're talking petabytes and petabytes of data that we gather on a daily basis. So how do you decipher through this data and understand where we need to improve in terms of quality of service? So those are some of the use cases that we have. to multiples of small automations across the whole organization, be it in our finance organization, HR organization. It's really being adopted pretty well. And one thing I want to come back to what you guys were talking about just in this last one, as these tools become more mainstream, the programming language for Gen AI today is English. That's it. You don't need to have, and these tools are so smart that, you just tell it what you want and it'll do it for you. So, I expect that to become even more mainstream across businesses. And some of the stuff that we're doing, for example, with Gemini now.
Gemini, thank
I
you.
want to say Duet. With Gemini, as we're deploying that, those are some of the things that actually our users, our employees are experimenting with to do automations at their own level internally.
Yeah, Gemini for cloud is a big thing, and we just talked about Gemini Cloud Assist yesterday and how you can apply that to your enterprise network to optimize and troubleshoot. To your point, it's just a prompt, and it's going to evaluate a lot of different scenarios for you and put some information up there. Steve, you guys have been doing quite a bit in the with CCAI in the customer experience space as well. Anything that you want to offer up on that side?
Yeah, I mean, our experience has been that personalizing the interaction with customers drives a significant lift in revenue and customer satisfaction. And so that's really been profitable for us. That's been one of our very best use cases. And we're in the process of evaluating CCAI. So I'll let you know next year.
Is that wait, maybe see that Kamran was talking about?
Verizon is.
That's right. Well, he just gave me very good feedback before the speech. So, but our challenge there is, as I was saying, our use case, our lighthouse use case is live transcribe the call and then prompt the agent with recommended suggestions of solutions of the problem, but also things that you can upsell or cross-sell to.
Next best offer kind of things too.
Exactly, so mixing those together. So the call center becomes a revenue center, not just a cost center. And so we're really excited about that. So that's something we're actively exploring with your teams.
That's great. And Kamran, I think to that point, how do you guys view at Verizon? Is it a cost center? Is it a profit center? And is that changing over time?
It's got to be a profit center. This is the only chance that we have. Actually, in call centers, if you think about it, it's a two-way street. It's not just the customers calling us because they have an issue they want solved. It's also a chance for us to actually impress them with information, with, if we can upsell, we upsell. If we can't, tailor more to their needs, to your point, personalization is also very big for us as well. If we can more meet their customer needs, preventing churn is actually a lot less expensive than acquiring customers. So making sure customers are happy and they're staying with us is a very big thing.
And that hasn't changed in a while, though, the prevention of churn. But what's happening now is you're taking AI with CCAI and you're inserting that generative AI aspect to help minimize it at speed.
Personalization, that it'll be a one-to-one relationship between the customer and Verizon, and that's what we're aiming for.
Making it very personal.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Steve, let's move. You touched on it earlier. Operating across 26 different countries, different regulatory requirements. How are you thinking of that? How would you be using AI in that scenario? Because it's one thing to do it in country, but you still want to get an accumulation of that and still have a overarching orange view.
Yeah? That's right. Yeah, so we chose Google for all of our data and AI needs in public cloud, but I was just describing earlier, across these 26 countries have extremely diverse regulatory environments. So in some cases, there's certain data that just cannot leave on premise. And so having this really elegant hybrid architecture, both for data systems, but also now for AI, is transformative. So the idea that we can have a managed hardware and software product, so again, my data engineering, data management teams, they can focus on adding value, but now also our AI and machine learning teams can similarly have this really rich environment. So we have a version of Vertex that's running on GDC with not only first-party models from Google, things like speech-to-text and optical character recognition, but also we're really happy to see that the Google Vertex team and the GDC team, they're very open to the best class, not only of open weight models, like Llama, but also the ability to have open source tooling as well, because the pace of innovation in AI tooling is faster than anything I've ever seen. Just on a daily basis, we see the code basis of tools like Llama Index, like Lane Chain, like weights and biases moving, and these tools are incredibly powerful and useful for us. So in that scenario, the idea that we have this infrastructure that's on-prem where we can be doing even fine-tuning with world-class open source tools, as well as Vertex managed tools on these models, on the data that we can't send to public cloud in some countries, is really, really powerful. So, and I think also commercially, as I was saying, there's also commercial needs. The volume of data is so high that the idea that we have something very sophisticated that's uniform between the countries on-prem to do the filtering and data and simple AI operations without having to send it to public cloud to do that is also really great. And again, having that be dynamic so that whether we have changes in regulatory, which occur quite unpredictably across our 26 countries, but also in an environment like, let's say we have an unexpected network event, we can then send much more data than we normally would to GCP, take advantage of the full power of BigQuery and the other tools there to analyze and understand that event. Having that dynamic abilities in a way that's really elegant is great.
Yeah, and in fact, like, I think even geographically, between country to country, given the regulations are different, and in some cases you may want to do processing of a particular field within the country or processing of speech to text in a country versus in another country that may not be needed, right?
That's right.
So having this set of capabilities available both in a cloud region as well as on Google Distributed Cloud, and then picking and choosing as you deem fit for your particular regulatory regime is sort of like the model that we envision would be.
That's right.
Here, yeah.
And that's going to be dynamic.
Exactly.
So today we have certain countries where we can send everything to public cloud, certain countries where certain network data and network topology information can only be on-prem, certain countries where the speech of customers can't leave the country, which is not an issue in other countries. And depending on the regulator, depending on the government, that can change unpredictably. So we needed to have a really flexible solution. And also we needed to have a solution where just because we would build the solution ourselves, which historically is what we did, meant we didn't have a rich ecosystem of third-party solutions that was coming to us that we could select between to meet all of these challenges that we have. So again, simplified our operations, but also simplified our supply chain and our interaction with the vendors, because on GDC we have world-class solutions coming to us that are that we can deploy at scale.
And we just announced here a new partner program as well to build out the ISVs on top of GDC and really help to scale that for you on your behalf. That's again an advantage, as you guys discussed, of a platform-based environment. Ankur, kind of what are you seeing across some of the CSPs? We touched on this a little bit earlier, but on the operation side of the business, what's the knock of the future look like?
Yeah, look, if I take a step back, right, overall, I think we covered these themes already, but broadly, we are seeing, when it comes to telcos, them using generative AI in the context of network operations, field operations, customer experiences, as well as we didn't really touch much about like sales and marketing and legal, but like those are also departments where we see generative AI being used quite widely. When it comes to, your question was more specifically about network operations, just taking a slight tangent over here, like we as Google also operate a fairly large network, and we have been using both sort of AI and generative AI capabilities on our own network, and so there are some very interesting and like meaningful results at scale, and meaningful savings or improvements that we have seen on our own network. So just to give an example, something as simple as forecasting, right? Network forecasting, like standard regression based analysis. What we did was we input several thousands of different time series into AutoML, and we took its help to figure out like what would be the forecasting technique. And this was on top of, we have a really solid forecasting team, network forecasting team. But even so, we were able to get significantly more accurate network forecasts. If, now that we look back a few years and in the analysis that we had done a couple of years back, and so now that we have been using that system, that has led to very making sure that we are deploying just in time. So we're not, so neither do we fall short, nor are we deploying a lot of capex, which is not, getting underutilized. And based on that, like we are seeing significant just savings overall. That's just one example, right? Another example is we use reinforcement learning for IGP metric optimization. Again, very significant improvements in terms of overall how optimally the network, the underlying network gets used. More recently with generative AI, we are using root cause, like most operators of networks, we also, anytime there is an outage, anytime there is an event, like we do these root cause analysis and we put those in our internal knowledge databases. Now, what we are now doing is we created a retrieval augmented generative search solution on top of these RCAs, just to make it simpler for our network operations teams to very quickly go and look for and just type questions like, hey, where was the last similar outage happened, and that would just spit out like with attribution to the specific RCAs, can give you an example of where what the root cause was, what was the action taken, and so that reduces the mean time to repair it and bring the service back up. So I'm just giving you some examples of things that have already been working on, things that are already working on the network space specifically.
So Ankur, I think what is really nice there is we're taking advantage of the knowledge we have from operating one of the world's largest networks that serves billions of consumers from a YouTube and Gmail perspective, and using that and then bringing that into the community from an open source.
Yeah, just to be clear, like most of these things were built on top of like standard Google Cloud AI tools that exist and AI products that exist out there. I mentioned about AutoML, I mentioned about things being built on top of Vertex AI and so on and so forth. Like these are just standard tools we have had for a while, and building these on top of those, yeah.
Very good.